Welcome to the Cybersec Migrant podcast. I'm Femi, your host and guide in the dynamic world of cybersecurity. Here we dive into insightful interviews, stories, and discussions with industry experts, professionals, and thought leaders. Whether you're just stepping into cybersecurity realm or you're a seasoned veteran, our goal is to empower you with the knowledge you need to thrive. From industry trends to career guidance, success stories, and actionable tips, we cover it all. Before we jump into today's episode, a quick request. If you find the content valuable and think others would too, don't keep it to yourself. Share the Cybersec Migrant podcast and our YouTube channel with your friends, colleagues, and fellow enthusiasts. Your recommendations would help us grow and create a community that fosters learning and collaboration. And now, let's get into the heart of cybersecurity insights. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to this episode of the Cybersec Migrant. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Cybersec Migrant. And today we're doing something a bit different from what we usually do. So, usually we talk to people who are in cybersecurity and talk about their experiences or what they've done and all of that. But today I've been having a conversation with a few people, especially new immigrants. And one of the things they've asked and said is, we moved to Canada at first, but we don't know exactly what to do, or we have a challenge of how do we change to, how do we prepare ourselves for work in Canada? How do we make that mental mind shift to now that we're in Canada to actually fit into the Canadian system? And that has been a challenge for a lot of new immigrants. So I reached out to one of my friends and I said, hey, would you like to come on? So today we have a guest who is a professional in that area. And please join me to welcome Leke Adesuyi. He is a versatile human resources leader. He's got a robust legal foundation and he specializes in employee and labor relations with over 70 years of experience. And he's been involved in several industries here in Canada and also prior to Canada as well. So he's been in maritime, he's been in oil and gas, telecommunications, and even professional services as well. Currently, he's the manager for employee and labor relations at the Port of Vancouver, and he also shares his knowledge as a human resources instructor at the Melville School of Business at Quantum Polytechnic University here in British Columbia. He's also a career coach. He's an instructor at the Luminous Consulting Academy, and he's keenly committed to fostering positive employee and labor relations and also imparting valuable HR insights through training, career coaching, and mentoring. And not everyone knows this, but outside of his regular 9 to 5, he loves photography, poetry, and the beautiful outdoors of British Columbia. Hey, that's why we call it beautiful British Columbia. And you can go on his social media and find his photos. And I've seen some really breathtaking photos. So I'm going to put the link down in the description below, both to his LinkedIn profile and also to his, photography handle. And you can see some of the beautiful sights of British Columbia. So Leke, welcome to the Cybersec Migrant today.
Thank you very much for having me, Femi. It's indeed a pleasure.
Did I do enough justice to you? Because like I said, I look at your profile and there's a lot that people can really learn from you. I know.
I keep wondering who you were talking about as you reeled it up.
Yes, and it's because one of the things, because I know we were talking about this a while earlier, and you've been here for quite a while. It's been a very long time, relative to some of us who are still green. You've been here, and I'm sure you've seen, how the country has changed, how things have moved. I was looking at some statistics earlier, and it was like, um, the well, first we know that right now about half of everybody in Canada today was born outside of Canada. That's about, I think that's what the statistic is. So 40 million people, about 20 million of them were born outside of Canada. That's a lot of people. And that thing is, I was looking at, because I moved to BC about 6 years ago. You've been here for longer than that. And I remember when I first moved here, you could count the number of Nigerians that we had in BC on your hands. We go to an event with Nigerians, and there's very few of us. But today, I go to events that the Nigerians, like the last Independence Day event, and I was like, where did all these people come from? I was shocked. So I think right now the top 5 countries for for immigrants to Canada are India in number one, China in number two, the Philippines in number three, Nigeria is number four, and France is number five. And that's statistics from 2021, but it was published this year by Statista. So Nigeria has gone from being about 7 or 8, I think, a while ago to now we're fourth, and it's growing. Jackpot syndrome.
Yeah.
So what I want to start is, like all of us who are doing that today, what inspired you to start that journey to Canada? And how did you navigate that transition to a new country, a new culture, and all of that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Femi. I can really identify with the change of demographics over time. I've been in Canada since 2011, and I've been in British Columbia since 2013. So that's roughly 10 to 11 years in British Columbia alone. I would say when I came to Canada, it was the pre-Japa era. it was it was more of nothing short of youthful exuberance at that stage, but it was more of a mixture of curiosity and also the desire for postgraduate education. It made sense
Yeah,
for me
yeah,
at that point to undergo some postgraduate study. And because I had a few people who went before me to Canada, and they said a whole lot of good things about Canada. It was an unknown territory for me. I've never traveled that far away from home. It's a different continent across the Atlantic. That was the reason why I came. It was more of that curiosity, and quality Canadian education was quite attractive, and I took it. And so that my Canadian journey did start from there.
yeah. That's interesting. I know one of the biggest draws for most people, the quality of life in Canada. It's because in Nigeria, I remember once upon a time it used to be Canada needs people. So there was
Hmm.
even ads in the papers, and it's the quality of education I can attest to. I also went to Kwantlen myself as well, so I can tell the quality of education, and that's always a big draw, and it continues to be. Every year there's a huge number of international students that come to Canada. That even now the government is beginning to say, okay, we need to do something to help these people transition in there. And let's step away from international students for a bit, and let's just talk about people who move here, especially economic immigrants. Family class, express entry, and all of that. You know, as someone who spends time coaching new immigrants, what are some of the challenges you've noticed that they face, when they try to establish themselves in Canada? Because part of the biggest challenges for new immigrants is they're trying to establish themselves personally, professionally, and how do you guide them through that emotional and mental, transition of moving to Canada? Because many people, they move here, but they still have a lot of ties to their home country. There's still a lot of,
Hmm.
nostalgia, and that sometimes makes it difficult for them to transition. So how do you guide them? What strategies can they help? Can they take to help them adapt to a new culture while preserving their unique identity? Because you don't have to lose your identity because you moved to Canada, right?
Yeah, so thank you very much for that question, Femi. That just flows from your first question. I can talk a lot about my experience in this about 13 years, can take the whole day to talk about that. But one thing, however, stands out. There's a good dose of patience and tenacity required to pull through what we call that transition into Canada. So the challenges a lot of immigrants face are in different facets, right? You have the financial one, you have the cultural challenges, you have the social-cultural challenges, you have challenges with family relationships, just because of the unique trajectory of things here. You have to deal with the weather, you have to deal with the geography, which is quite different. There's a lot of
Yeah.
professional challenges depending on what profession you are coming from. In Nigeria, there's always the emotional pressure or the emotional challenges, what I call the new immigrant depression that does happen to a lot of people. It is not real. It is more than just what we see in the social media. There's a context to that, right? So those are the challenges, but we can break it down one after the other. But the first thing I'll say here is a whole lot of people are consumed about the idea of Canada when they're planning to
Yes.
come here and not the reality of it. So the idea of Canada, from Lagos, from Abuja, from Ibadan, from Sokoto, from Port Harcourt, is very different from the reality when you hit the ground here. I remember when I landed in Canada, I was coming from Abuja as then from like almost 42 degrees in December to Lakeshore to Lakeshore in Toronto. And in the next morning, because I landed in the evening, the next morning I went to the hotel lobby and the door flung open and I tasted -12 for the first time in my life. And I did question my choices at that point, but it was too late,
Why did I
right?
come here?
So why did I? That's the question. Why did I come here, right? So and then secondly, how I manage this with the people I coach and mentor is we walk through the real reason, why people make that choice in the first place, and then guide them through what is important for them. It's always a individualistic, bespoke conversation because individual stories leading to their Canadian experience is different. I've met people who came to Canada because they have a child that has a very unique medical need, and that made the entire family make that move. Some is career, Some they are coming here to reunite with their spouses. So it all depends, And for those moving, as family, understanding that Canada will challenge or might change what is their family dynamics before coming to Canada is key, right?
Yeah, true.
What works in Abuja or Lagos might not work in
In Toronto.
Vancouver or Toronto
Yeah,
or Edmonton or Winnipeg or Saskatoon. So partners have to be able to demonstrate that they understand the flexibility around chores, around finances, around decision making. So those are the areas I do focus on when I'm doing or engaging with new immigrants who are trying to walk through their transition. Unity of purpose is very important here, right? In the Canadian society for couples, and most especially for them to succeed financially and professionally. Those are the areas that is often not talked about. But in terms of financial, cultural, social, economic, and relation, we can break that down. For example, in financial, how do you plan your retirement? What's your credit score, situation like? How do you plan, buying a house? When do you do that? What kind of pressure should you put on yourself? Should you lease a car? Should you rent a car? These are some of conversations a lot of adults have never had in their lives until coming to
it's not
Canada.
our
So
culture in
that,
Nigeria.
yeah, because the cultural context is not there, and all that is connected to your career. Because if you have a home front that is a bit turbulent, that is not very well taken care of, it can spill to your ability to quickly navigate your career. Because if you're always taking a time off at work and you have a childcare situation, there's a whole lot to navigate. Eventually, people understand and are able to do it, but where coaching and mentoring comes in is you bridge that gap instead of
Okay.
going through 2 3 years of nasty difficult experience. You have somebody firsthand who can hold your hand through that process.
Yeah, that's very important. I think I completely agree with that. And I think that's one of the things they say experience is always the best teacher. And when they say you don't have to reinvent the wheel, because if someone has gone through this before and it worked for them, why do you want to do it any differently, right? Because that's why it's there for you to learn from it.
Oh, sorry, Femi. One of the things I would quickly like to mention is also I also help people go through what you call a realistic picture of their journey, using my own
Yeah,
experience and using the experience of people I've mentored in the past. It's not always the same experience, like I said. It's always
yeah,
kind of like bespoke. And in terms of cultural, maintaining that cultural balance and retaining that cultural identity, preserving that in Canada can be quite a challenge too. We have to admit when we come to North America that when we move there, we sign up for a cultural adaptation and flexibility. We cannot survive without doing
doing
that.
that.
The goal is finding a balance, right? And knowing when to be Nigerian and when to be Nigerian Canadian. That's very, very important for a lot
I
of
like
people.
that. I
I
like
say
that.
that when people are having challenges at work in terms of understanding cultural context, said you signed up, you were not kidnapped from Nigeria. You signed up voluntarily for this. And because of that, you have to know when to be Nigerian and when to be Nigerian Canadian and when to be absolutely Canadian about things. It all
Yeah.
depends on the context and it takes some time to get our head in that space.
I completely agree with that. I was having a conversation with someone not too long ago, and we are talking about how sometimes one of the things many immigrants don't realize is that when you move here, you have to put in the work because the government, either the federal government or the provincial government or the municipal government, doesn't owe you anything. It's
Mm-hmm.
up to you to actually do what you need to do. That is why one of the things, like from what I can hear from what you're saying, is that flexibility is key. It's very important. But aside from
Absolutely.
flexibility, are there any other strategies or tips you can sort of share that can help new immigrants make that mental shift? Because I think one of the biggest shifts to make is that mental shift. It's not the physical one. You're here in Canada already, but many
Mm-hmm.
times you're still mentally tied to where we're coming from. So, what are other strategies apart from flexibility? Can you say it's going to help new immigrants make that mental shift to adapt to the new environment that is Canada and help their career grow? Because let's face it, everybody wants to grow in their career when you come here. You don't want to come here and just be a liability.
Yes. Oh, thank you very much for that question, Femi. The first thing I say is don't be Lot's wife, right? Don't look back on, or looking back can greatly discourage and distract you. You have made that
Yeah.
decision, and sometimes it takes some time to invest in that decision. Your investment is beyond your proof of funds or your landing or how much you paid for your first house here or your first car. Your investment also include settling down, you know, having a roadmap and looking forward. If you are constantly looking back at the people you
Yeah.
left behind,
Yeah.
at the job you left behind, at the house you left behind, you are better be back in Nigeria, because you won't have, and to be honest, men have the greatest challenge with this, especially when things are not transitioning. My experience is men, I have to tell this, like you're here or your family is here. You move completely with your family. There's a reason why you made this move in the first place. Being together as a family unit helps a lot. Making sure that you plan your career within the context of Canada and invest in that is very important. Secondly, don't be under pressure, because if you begin to compare
Raskimono.
yourself with folks who have spent so much time and
Mm.
investment here, no matter how much you bring from Nigeria, you might not be able to have the RSP of people who have been here for the past 10 years. You get what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly.
Canada has a uh, time thing. If you invest the right energy and the right resources, time will reward you of
Yes.
certainty.
There's no
So
rush.
that there's no rush, right? And also, how to one of the strategies is don't be too rigid. Keep your mind open to learning new things. And you know, Canada might reshape you as an individual completely. For some people, for a lot of us in Nigeria, a lot of people ended up working in the industry they got a job in. Not that's what they really want to do.
What you do?
And Canada
Absolutely.
has the possibility of giving you that second chance to do what you love to do, and it would pay you. For example, I used to tell people, like, if everything was right, I would have ended up a farmer. I love farming, right? you know but the context of Nigeria is either you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're an engineer, or you're a
Engineer.
disgrace to the family. So you have to choose one of those options.
Mm.
I've sat with people, I've counseled somebody who went back and became an HVAC technician. I've worked with someone, a close family friend who left uh, MBA program and became a mechanic. Guess what? He's doing way better than all the people that are in who took the MBA program, making double of what they're making and working less and having better quality of life. So keep the mind open, right?
Yeah.
Another thing I say, of recent has been there's been so much negative energy or negative
Yeah.
material content on social media. People landing in Canada within 1 year and they're complaining. Canada is not a sprint. Canada is a
Not get rich
relay
quick
to
scheme.
some degree. It's not a get quick scheme. You have to work towards a certain plan. And sometimes some plan. I know someone who came to Canada with PhD and went back to medical school for 5 years. And guess what? He's a qualified medical doctor today. And you know what medical
There
doctors
you
are
go.
making in Canada. So
Yeah.
don't join the regret and critic band. Every small thing you have your ring light on, talking about how nasty Canada is, how bad the opportunities are, and you've not even spent you've not
Yeah.
experienced winter, fall, spring or summer, and you're already
Or
complaining.
wildfire.
All right, or wildfire, or flood, or freezing rain, or hailstone.
Mm-hmm.
You've
Mm-hmm.
not seen it
Mm-hmm.
all. So I think that can be very distracting too, and can emotionally discourage you, right?
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
sometimes our battle is not a battle of what we see. The interviews we go for, it's a battle of the mind. If you feel you are not
Yeah.
capable, you might not have the courage to apply for things that could actually open opportunities for you. So keeping the mind open and positive is very important. So other strategies I can quickly, you do well without a connection here. You don't necessarily need to be connected to anybody to get any job here. If you focus on the right things and you profile yourself and you have a good network, it can help you go far. I always say this, and I've always said it, that in Canada sometimes you have to be a seed that's ready to fall to the ground and die and germinate anew. I have seen people restart their careers, including my own partner, from banking to IT consulting, right? Within a very short period of time. But that
Yeah.
ability to say, okay, I think I know where I need to be. I think I know what I need to invest in it. I'm not going to listen to all the noise and all the negative energy. I'm here already, and I'm going to make the best use of it. A lot of positive energy is needed sometimes to as a strategy to deal with this. I can go on and on. One of the things I also talk about is your years of experience might not mean much here, right? And sometimes it's not about discrimination, because I've seen people quick to talk about, hey, they're discriminating me, but you think about it. You're coming from a different environment, culturally, politically, financially. Sometimes you don't speak the language. I've seen people like, oh, I was denied this job. When I look at the content of the job, when I look at their profile and their resume, you haven't presented yourself as somebody who understands. Some things are very
Exactly.
contextual in Canada. If you've not worked
Yeah.
in that industry, if you know, especially in my own field, if you don't understand the laws, the regulations, if you don't know all that, even if you've done something similar to that, it might still be challenging. So,
It will be.
if you spend some time and invest in retooling yourself for Canada, it makes it easier to make the transition. And I'm not saying there are instances where there are not discrimination or, but I've worked in almost all the organizations I've worked. And I said I've worked in oil and gas, I've worked in maritime now. There are Nigerians all over the place doing fantastic work up to director level. So
Yeah.
when people talk about this, if you have the right skill and you present yourself properly and you show that you have flexibility um, in the context of the environment, you would do well. So those are the strategies I do advise people to adopt, and it's done new immigrants very well. Those who are open mind for it and have the tenacity and also the patience.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I remember a story of someone I spoke to a while ago. He's not from Nigeria, originally from Cote d'Ivoire, I think. He was a medical doctor back in Cote d'Ivoire. He moved to Canada, and I think he realized, like you said, Canada gives you a chance to wipe the slate clean and write your own story. And this young man went and said, I am going to become an electrician. And he became a red seal electrician. So right now he has his red seal electrician. He's been flown out to places to teach people everything. And his annual salary is six figures, and the first number is not one. That
Hmm.
is what his annual pay is. And he was talking to his friends back in Cote d'Ivoire, and just like, you left doctor to become an electrician. Are you okay? And I was like, if only you know what you're talking about. And that's just the
Yeah.
truth, because being in that environment, you don't get a sense of what it is like here. And, so
Hmm.
being here, it's completely different. So one of the challenges, like you rightly said, immigrants find it difficult to let go of the past because you're always looking back. And as long as you're doing that comparison, especially if you were very well to do, or very comfortable back in your home country, Canada is not your home country. Don't do that because you are doing yourself a disservice. So
Absolutely.
now that we've talked about it, we know that it's important, and like you said, building a new career, you want to sometimes start a new career as well. What are the things? What would you say to, people who are already here or who are thinking, okay, maybe I'll move to Canada this year or next year, I'm gonna probably have to shift my career. What are the things they can do to sort of pivot those skills that they have and those experiences that they have? Because like you rightly said, experiences are different, but we don't completely negate any previous experience. So how can they
Yeah.
pivot the skills and previous experiences they have into a meaningful role in Canada to build a successful career, mentorship and all of that? How does that come into play in this kind of situation?
Thank you very much, Femi. I think the number one thing is information. Information is king when it comes to transitioning in Canada, right? Speaking to the right people, having the right information, you'll be surprised how many support, how many government grants are available for immigrants to develop skills, to take programs, especially the ones that are very focused on minority groups like new immigrants, like women, like people with disability. There's so much available out there if you have the right information, right? Another thing is, what I do with people who are looking to do that, I do a skill assessment. What do you have? What have you done in the past? And try and match that up with something that is of equivalence here, or instances where their skills are transferable, and then give options. Because you've done this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And then let people research. Sometimes they do the research themselves and self-select which meets their kind of needs, or what they think they can easily transition to, right?
Yeah.
Also, I try to be realistic and respectful, because sometimes you have to give people this, straight feedback. Hey, what you have would not work here, because that's where frustration starts sometimes, when people are like hitting the wall. When that's happening, it's an indicator that there's a mismatch of something, whether there's
Yeah.
a mismatch of skill, whether there's a mismatch of expectation, sometimes whether there's a mismatch of geography. Because I've advised people, hey, you cannot come to British Columbia if that's your skill set. You find your skill set better working in northern Alberta, or working in Manitoba or Saskatchewan than coming to a place like Toronto or going to any of those main hubs. If you're
Yeah.
multilingual, you have a better chance of succeeding in Ottawa or Montreal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So these are those realistic and respectful feedback can help, many reduce the frustration and waste of years of just trying one thing that's not happening, right? One other thing, people who are looking to come, you have to build a clear path, right?
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
be
True.
you can't be jumping on every single thing. They bring Scrum today, you jump on it. They bring cybersecurity today, you jump on it. They bring something else today, you jump on it.
Jack of
You
all
have
trade.
to Yeah, you have to create a clear path, because one thing I that Canada rewards is consistency. I hire people all the time, and I've benefited from that because I was trained as a lawyer. Um, and some of my lawyer friends will ask me, why are you not in practice? I found my footing very early. I know my area of specialization. There are very few of us with that skill set, and I find it personally more rewarding if I'd gone the other path, right? And
Yeah.
now I'm
Yeah.
trying to bring a whole lot of our people on that part because I see the gap and I see the opportunities. But it was easier for me because I already have a clear path 13 years ago, and it's very rewarding. So that also has to be there. And then you have to build your profile. If you're someone in a professional field, you need a sound professional. Someone should be able to click on your LinkedIn and see, okay, this person is able to do,
Exactly.
because the
Exactly.
world is changed. You know, the last two opportunities or three opportunities I've worked on, they were LinkedIn. Somebody just messaged me, hey, are you interested in this? And I
Yeah.
do a lot of referrals to that. Companies reach out to me because of my skill set and ask me, okay, do you know anybody,
Who can do this?
with this skill set? And then I'm looking for people all over the place. And sometimes people will say, oh, I have this skill set, I can do it. I go to their profile, there's nothing on their profile that sells them as that. So I
Agree.
also, part of what I do in my coaching and mentoring is to help people develop a profile that can speak to their journey and speak to their career goals. Mentorship is very important. If you come to Canada as a professional person, as someone who's struggling with what to do, with family, with career, with transitioning, you need mentoring, right? And sometimes you have to seek professional help than just people giving you information on hearsay or their own personal bias, right?
With
Because
no
a
experience.
professional, yeah, with no experience, like I see people who are just 2 years in Canada advising people on the difficulty, and you've not seen the 360 rotation of the sun yet.
Yeah.
There's something about someone with an experience in an area who has also seen a whole lot of transition give you that kind of support. And that's what I provide to the people I work with. And I go back to the first thing. All you need to succeed is information, the right kind of information
Exactly.
at the
Yeah.
right time.
And you can build on that information. So once you have that information, it helps you to be flexible. You can have clarity of purpose. You can be focused on what exactly you want to do. It is, and like you said,
Hmm.
starting early. I just want to
Yes.
go back to one of the things you said earlier. And I know this. I was fine. We know that many people who look like us, black people, are still in the minority here. Not a lot of black people in leadership positions, but they're getting there. So
Mhm.
as somebody who does a lot of hiring, who is in a leadership position already, if someone is aspiring as a minority, either black or brown or whatever, as a minority, and you aspire to get into a leadership position, what are the things you would recommend? To say, hey, if you want to do that, then these are the things that would help you, especially in Canada, to get to a leadership position.
So I will talk about the kind of high level stuff and also like technical competencies. On the high level stuff, you have to have a whole lot of cultural competence. You have to be able to work in a room and the room trusts you enough that you understand how things work here. And why leadership is that's very important for leadership. You're going to be leading people in the Canadian context, the Canadian
Mm-hmm.
culture. If you're new, I see people who are directors in Nigeria. I said, oh, I didn't get a director position here. It's not discrimination. How do I trust you coming from Nigeria to understand the nuances of the Canadian work
Exactly. That's it.
context, work culture? Except you've worked in a global organization, you probably worked in a similar context. It's and it's always very easy through the interviews when you ask those behavioral competencies on team, how to motivate team, how to be. you can see the approach. I've been in those interviews, and at the back of my head, I was like, you're not going to get a job with that kind of response, right? So that is very, very important. Understanding the cultural context. Also, your communication skills is very important. And this is not about speaking English. Do you
Yeah.
understand? How you it's not grammar, it's just how you communicate. There's a way, if you work in banking in Nigeria, the way bankers communicate in Nigeria, they cannot communicate like that here,
You
right?
can't. You dare
I,
not.
I yeah, I've seen people who I've done a particular session on why people fail their probation period in Canada, new immigrants. After getting the job and getting the opportunity, a whole lot of it have to do with one, not having cultural competence, one, not having the right communication skills, right?
Yeah.
And also understanding, you have to understand policies, you have to understand laws, legislation, you have to understand practices. So those are key elements you need to have when you want leadership position. And it's very difficult if you've not grown organically from this context or having the blessing of coaching and mentoring.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
have so I work with some people who are actually, they've gotten the job, but occasionally we'll sit down every maybe once in a month or once in a quarter to talk about their challenges with communication, with leading in a team, with understanding cultural context and helping them navigate that. Because beyond having the competency, the technical competency, you need that, right? And then when you're not sure of something, we also come from a context where we don't ask questions so that we don't look like we don't know
You're
what we're
stupid.
doing. uh
Exactly.
And then you now go ahead and do what you're not supposed to do. You wing it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things in the Canadian work context that you cannot wing. You are better not doing it and
Yeah.
seeking help
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
doing it wrong, because you can create a lot of liability for your organization. Canada is a very compliance driven work
Society.
context.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether you are dealing with a unionized environment, which is kind of my thing, or you're even dealing with non-unionized environment, there's a lot
Mm.
of privacy, human rights legislation. So
Yeah.
understanding people management is very important for leadership. So if you've not managed people in Canada before and you are a new manager in Canada and your organization is not providing coaching and mentoring for you, you should talk to me. Because if you're going to last in that position, it might be totally dependent on your ability to manage people. Because there are things you cannot say, there are things you cannot say in a certain way, there are things you cannot say in a certain manner or on a certain day for a certain duration. So those are the things that we should look out for. It might sound very difficult. However, with coaching, with mentoring, with some
Yeah.
taking some specific training and understanding more of the cultural context, leadership is possible. And you see, I see that in banking, I see it in oil and gas, I see it in the legal field. They're Nigerians, new immigrants, recent immigrants doing fantastically well. I know someone who I was talking to and coaching before coming to Canada, who is now a company secretary in Canada, right? So people are growing
Impressive.
very well here. But if you have the right information and the right support, you definitely get there.
Yeah, thank you. And that's true. Like you said, it's always very refreshing to see this, this diverse perspectives, especially for new immigrants in leadership roles and senior roles in the Canadian workplace. But that doesn't take away the fact that yes, many immigrants still face barriers. There's still a lot of bias sometimes, either overtly or
Absolutely.
covertly, advertently or inadvertently. There's some of these things, but Canada is becoming more and more diverse, so much more. So if someone was to ask you and say, okay, what we're becoming so much diverse. There's so many more immigrants now. What do you see? What are the benefits of having immigrant perspectives? These diverse immigrant perspectives, especially in leadership positions in the workplace environment in Canada. What would be the benefits? What would you say?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of benefit, and I would say providing that opportunity for new immigrants, it's an evolving conversation, right? It does provide more opportunities for referrals. For someone like myself, I'm constantly referring people for opportunities because I'm able to connect and also, connect with existing structure to say, hey, this guy is new, but this is what is brought into the picture, and also help them structure their profile in such a way that can align with what the organization is asking for. Because sometimes it's difficult to know what the organization is really looking for from the outside
Mm-hmm.
when you're
Mm-hmm.
new, because you don't understand the landscape. You've not worked in that context, and constantly, like myself, I'm always part of diversity and inclusion committees, and one of the things I'm very vocal about is some of the biases that do happen in the recruitment
Yeah.
process, and help them to bust the myth. The fact that someone is not speaking English, and I always give
Like a
examples. I'm
Canadian.
like, I've worked with different people from different parts of the world over time. Ability to speak English is not it. As far as you're able to communicate what is fundamental, and you have your communication skills and writing to an appreciable degree, it's not in any way a measure of your intellect, right? So I always use myself, my experience, my example to drive that conversation in any space I've been in, right? I do it in a very respectful manner, but and I've discovered that a lot of times it's not even discrimination; it's just the fear of unknown, right? Okay, I don't
Absolutely.
know.
I
Some
completely
some
agree.
some organizations don't even know how to deal with it because they don't want to be seen as discriminatory. So at the end of the day, the decision they're going to take around areas where they're not sure of what to do will still exclude immigrants at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I help to answer those questions. And people reach out to me, even with organizations I've worked with before. Hey, we're trying to hire somebody from Nigeria. This is the experience. Can you give us some context? And I go ahead and do that. And I constantly do referrals within the community. Like
Yeah.
recruiters reach out to me. Do you have someone that can do this? Oh, I have someone, and then push them forward. If more and more people in leadership, more and more immigrants or people who come from that community or that minority group are doing that in that different sphere of leadership, it will
It
make it easier
grows.
for those who are
Yeah.
coming in to gain more perspective. Because initially I had that challenge. I reached out to a couple of people when I came here in 2011. I didn't get a lot of traction. I didn't get a lot of support. And I had good experience, good multinational experience. I felt I could bring to bear. But and I made up my mind that I wasn't going to be that person, regardless of
Exactly.
who
Yeah.
comes to me. If there's an opportunity to provide context and information, why not? And
Yeah.
that's proving to be very significantly successful, because I do partner with some of these friends and associates that I've met over the years to work on different projects now. So it kind of makes we grow together when we bind together like that. And this is a land of opportunities. Nobody is going to restrict your growth just because you give them
Absolutely.
opportunity or information.
Yeah.
There's so much there's so much work to be done here. We can't finish it in 24 hours.
Oh, definitely not. And that's the thing. It's there's so much opportunity. I'm like, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to be, there's so much opportunity for you to actually do that, as long as you're willing to put in the work. But
Absolutely.
you touched on something that actually is interesting to me as well. Also, where I work as well, I'm actively involved in our in our DEI policies and all the initiatives there, because sometimes it's important to show, because you can't complain about being excluded or being excluded against if you are not showing up. You have to show up,
Hmm. Yeah.
because if you keep on saying, well, I'm going to wait for them to call me, then no one is going to call you. So
Mm.
but today, one of the biggest buzzwords, especially in the corporate environment, particularly here in Canada, because of the experiences and just kind of multicultural history, is that diversity, equity, and inclusion. So
Inclusion,
every
yes.
workplace now is doing their best to show up, or to show that they're inclusive, they're diverse, there's equity and all of that. So, and you've mentioned a few things, something that you have a lot of experience with, particularly in your role at work and also in your other thing that you do outside of work. So just give us what are some of the few things, because like you said, some organizations don't know what to do, so they pretend to be
Hmm.
an ostrich and put their head in the sand. But what are the things that companies can do to actually show that immigrant employees feel valued, feel heard, and they are truly living out their DEI policies?
There's a whole lot of things organizations can do, and I've seen a lot of organizations in Canada doing that. An employee resource group is one, right?
Yeah.
Where employees are given the platform to be able to live their experience within the Canadian environment. There are
Yeah.
organizations. I know organizations that are 70% immigrants, recent
Immigrant.
immigrants in their workforce. Driving the Canadian economy through their hard work and determination and courage. An organization like that should create safe space for them to be able to, knowing fully well that understanding that the transition they're making to Canada, it's not easy. Whether it's self-motivated or it's an economic driven immigration, still immigrants or recent immigrants, we feel the blues. because we're not in our, so to speak, organic context. So organizations should create more room for ERGs. The
Yeah,
diversity and inclusion committees created by organizations should not just be for the show, right?
exactly.
A lot of
Talk the talk and
organizations
walk the
would,
walk.
and walk the walk. Invest time, let leadership know what is going on there. It's not throwing money at the problems like, hey, we've given you a budget of 100,000, do whatever you want to do with it, use it for Black History Month, and that's it. No, show that you actually understand interest, celebrate success is very important.
Yeah,
One
yeah,
thing that is very important in immigrant experience is when you see someone like you in a position of leadership, or when you see someone like you succeeding and excelling at the top, it gives you that, okay, yes, this is doable, this is achievable. If
yeah.
someone like me can do this, then I can do it.
Then I can do
And
it
and
too.
and when organizations do that and spotlight these individuals and their contribution to not only to the company, but to the society, to the community where they live,
Yeah,
um, it makes a whole lot of difference. For example, when you go to a lot of communities in Canada now, Nigerian doctors are the ones, who are the new breeds coming in to bridge the gap that wasn't there before.
exactly.
How
Yeah,
many of that is celebrated? I live in a community, and 5 years ago, there was no single Nigerian doctor. And as we speak today, in that same community, they're almost, by what I heard, at least I know about 6 or 7 Nigerian doctors in that community now. But you don't see that being celebrated in any way. And they're providing critical services that is missing in that community, helping
yeah,
people to
yeah,
have good access to good medical care. So that can also help other people to see, hey, if someone like me is doing that, is achieving that, then recognizing the contribution of recent immigrants and immigrants generally have developed Canada from for what it is today, and they're still going
yeah,
to be doing that because it's to a certain extent Canada is very immigrant friendly. So I think that is very important, and within our own community too, we need to be more receptive of the kind of support we can give and we can get in the community, just helping ourselves to grow, providing that information, providing a platform to kind of have these conversations, to walk through some of the difficulties folks are having. Because when we succeed
together.
together.
Exactly.
My joy is to see everyone coming here being able to transition into their careers and living a fantastic life. For a lot of people, they came here for the quality of life, not
Yes.
particularly money. So, but you need to have your career, you need to have a job to pay the bills and live that quality life. So, there's a lot we can do. Employers can do. There's a lot we can do as a people, especially for new immigrants to keep the mind open, to seek help from professional help that can help them transition faster, and also, like I said earlier, know when to be Canadian, know when to be Canadian Nigerian, and then know
No way
when
to
to
be
be
Nigerian.
Canadian and then Nigerian, right?
Exactly. Absolutely true. Also, I mean, you're absolutely right about that. I also, you know how it is to get a family doctor. It took forever. I have a family doctor now. He's Nigerian. My physio is Nigerian as well. So there's a lot more of us, and we celebrate these things as well. So it's always something I enjoy doing. And we've spoken a lot about so many things. Before I ask the final question, I'm just going to digress a bit and do a quick fire round. You are you a morning person or a
Night,
night person? Quick fire round. Morning or night?
night,
Tea or
night.
coffee?
Oh, coffee all day.
Sunrise, sunset.
Sunset.
Two things that people would not know about you but are very, very interesting. If you're good.
I'm not scared of snakes.
Ooh, that's interesting. I'm very scared of snakes. That's
I
interesting.
used to and then second thing, I used to fish and hunt a lot related to that in my teenage years. I was much of that kind of person, and it's very hard
That
when I tell
explains
people
it.
that I used to do that.
That's very interesting. No wonder you aren't scared of snakes. Maybe we should go fishing one day or go hunting. I have a friend who regularly, I think he was the first person who gave me venison. It was like, I think it was like, was it moose or deer meat? And then he made like ground beef out of it. It was lean meat. There was you'd be surprised. There's no fat in that meat, and it was quite tasty. So I can imagine that was
Yeah.
good. That was good. Okay. Finally, let's just get back on topic here. Just sort of round this one. So you've said so many things about how immigrants can actually help themselves put their best foot forward and make themselves a lot more give themselves a better chance at being a lot more successful when they come to Canada, rather than
Mm-hmm.
just looking back like Lot's wife, like you said, and saying, "Oh, Canada didn't give me this. I was better off in my country." Yada yada yada, and all of that. So just so that people know that actually it's possible, just to finalize all of this, could you sort of share a success story, or maybe a memorable experience from your journey that highlights that transformative impact that empowering an immigrant can actually do, and sort of aid in leadership development as well?
I'll say from personal experience, right? I remember in 2015, um, you know, I, it's been a struggle before then to kind of demonstrate my experience and, letting people recognize. And I went for a series of interviews for a particular organization. I was interviewed for an HR manager. And when I went through, I was presented to the organization. They called me back. I had, chats with a couple of people within that organization. I immediately, they were looking for 15 years of experience in a particular skill set. I only had 2 years of experience. But because I had number one, I had a Nigerian in me.
Yes,
Then
so you know they agree
secondly,
for
I
anybody.
had I yeah, I know the agree for anybody. I did my research thoroughly. I had a couple of calls with my coach, who happens to be my ex manager, who's working in another part of the world. We had good conversation, and by the time they presented the role to me, there was supposed to be a HR manager role. They changed the role from HR manager to a director for HR role, and then they upped the salary significantly. In fact, the consulting company was asking me, like, dude, what did you tell those people? Because now they've changed the job entirely and they're giving you something different. And for me, that opened the doors to other great things for me. Just because
Yeah.
I had I had that Nigerian experience, right? I'd lived in Canada as I then
Yes.
for 3 years. I've done some work. I did a bit of digging into how the things work around here. I kind of equipped myself very quickly, and most especially, I got a very good mentor who sat me down and said, "Okay, if you're going to be in a leadership position, this is what you need, this is what you need to say." So when I presented myself, I was fully ready for the opportunity. So it
Yeah.
was preparedness, meeting opportunity, and then the rest is history. And the relationship I built working in that organization for about 4 or 5 years, I still leverage on that today. It opens amazing doors. So just talking about how that has been for me on a personal note. But like I said, on the people I coach, there are tons of stories. The people who reach out to me when they're in Nigeria planning, and they're lawyers, they're doctors, they're engineers, they're working in IT. Then Canada now doing excellently well, and we still connect. Like when the next opportunity is coming, when they're preparing for the next thing, hey dude, let's sit down. 1 hour, we talk about it, we
Yeah.
plan, we execute, and we're there. We cannot go there alone by ourselves. We need
Yes.
that support. I've seen someone with no Canadian experience, right, transition from no Canadian experience to earning well over $160,000 in their first job here. Just having that support, knowing, okay, this is what to say, this is what to look out for, this is how you profile yourself, and this is how you sell your transferable skills. And before you know it, organizations, doors are opening up, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's very important. I've seen someone who struggled to write in the bar exams here and everything, and the person is a company secretary now in Canada for a large organization. So it is
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
But it takes a while. It's easy to see my profile today and say, hey, you've gone far here.
Not so
But
much. Yes.
there's a lot of
It's a journey
investment.
to it.
There's a journey to it, and Canada gets easier.
With
That's
time.
what I say.
Yes.
It gets easier. It gets to a time you don't even need to apply for jobs. Like I sometimes I call myself, I say I'm a corporate mercenary. I'm not scared. Honestly, I'm not scared of a layoff. It's
Yeah.
not out of pride or arrogance,
Yeah.
but I know my skill set. I know where to pivot. I know when to make decisions. When I was in, I remember when I was in oil and gas, I met the director then, when I was the VP then, I was being onboarded. I said, don't worry, I will do my work as the best of my ability. When I'm not happy here, you will know. And my being not happy here would not affect my job. And I'm pretty sure, I don't think anyone has put things, a new hire has put things like
Yeah.
that before.
So plainly.
Because she was just like, okay, what's your plan? I said, that's my plan. at least I know for the next 3 to 5 years, I want to be in this industry. I'm going to do my best. But when I'm not happy, I will let you know. And it's not going to spill into my job. And if I have to leave, I will give you sufficient notice. And another thing I'll say for new immigrants, even if you're joining new organization, you know where you're going. After 6 months, you now get what you're looking for. Make sure you close the door gently behind you.
Yeah.
The environment is so synchronized, you won't even believe it. Like when I was leaving, sorry for providing this full context. When I was leaving my last opportunity for my current one, two people came up to me and said, "Hey, I've already told my partner or my spouse in that organization that you're coming, that you're a great guy." So imagine if I was a terrible employee. That's the
Exactly.
same way. That's the
Exactly.
same way the news will go before you. And I proud to then, I even never knew these people had connection to the other organization. So it's very, very important for us to be very careful when,
Yeah.
let us understand the land before we begin to spread our wings within it. And as much as possible, understand organizational politics. And before you can play in it, know that you have a stake. Don't
Yeah.
play organizational politics when you don't have a stake. It's
Yeah.
different. The context is slightly different from what you experience in Nigeria here,
Yes. Or wherever you're coming
and
from.
yes, and the opportunity for growth is always there.
Yeah.
There's no limit. There's no cap to where you can get to. There might be challenges on the way. You might find yourself in situations that appears you're being discriminated against, but Canada still celebrates, recognizes, and reward merit.
Yeah.
But you need to
Yeah.
take yourself to that place before those opportunities start to happen. So
That's absolutely true. As you were speaking, I just remember this very, very popular Yoruba proverb from where we come from that "Ẹni tó bá domi síwájú, á tẹ̀lẹ̀ tútù." You cannot domi
definitely,
síwájú and má tẹ̀lẹ̀ tútù. It's not possible. You
it's
have to
not
do the work.
possible.
So, but
Yeah.
we've said so many things. There's been so much you've provided that's been so helpful. Thanks, Leke, for coming on. It's been very, very helpful. It's a pity. I know we've done so much already here, and there's still so much we've been unable to cover as well. But I know that this for the audience who's listening, they might have so many questions. So, would you be open to if anyone did want to, have a question or wanted to contact you for a mentorship session or a coaching session, or just sort of understand, how the environment works? Would you be open to having them contact you as well?
Oh, definitely. The best way to reach me is through my LinkedIn. So you can shoot me a message and we can set something up. I'm more than ready to take that on. I always do that on a continuous basis.
Okay.
I also learn a lot when I mentor people too. So
Yes.
it's a two
The
way
mentor
it's
also
a two
learns
way
too. I
street.
told people that all the time. It's not only the mentee that's learning; the mentor is also learning as well. So, people, there you have it. If you have any questions, I'm going to put a link down in the description below to like his LinkedIn profile, so you can connect with him if you have any questions or just want to chat. If you want somebody that has all the experience, well, a lot of experience about what you need to do to be successful in Canada, feel free to reach out to him and he'll be able to help you with that. If there's anything anyone can take away from today, what do you want to take away?
I'll say that our challenges and burdens as new immigrants, it does get lighter, right? With a good access to the right kind of resource, the right kind of information, and then our reality changes for the better. It does get better.
Yeah. It does get better. So there you've had people. It's difficult at the beginning, but then it gets better. So don't give up, persevere, and at the end of the day, it's going to be good. So that's been another episode on the Cybersec Migrant. Feel free to connect with us on our social media. If there's something you would like us to talk about, on a future episode, feel free to leave a comment down below here, or also on our social media. You can send us a DM on Twitter or Instagram, and we'll see how we can get that to work. But I want to thank Leke for coming on today. It's been so good having you on here today. You've provided a fresh, new perspective that isn't ones and zeros like we usually do on this program. So that's very good. And until next
Thank you,
time,
Femi.
thank you, the audience, for another episode of the Cybersec Migrant. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Cybersec Migrant podcast. We hope you found today's insights valuable and inspiring. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to check out our other episodes for more in-depth interviews, stories, and discussions with cybersecurity experts and thought leaders. Remember, the world of cybersecurity is ever evolving, and we're here to guide you through it. Whether you're just starting your journey or are a seasoned professional, there's always something new to discover. And one more ask, don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Share the CyberSec Migrant podcast on our YouTube channel with your friends, colleagues, and anyone who's passionate about cybersecurity. And let's build a community that thrives on knowledge and collaboration. Thank you for being a part of our growing audience, and your support means the world to us. Feel free to reach out to us with your feedback, questions, and comments, either on our Twitter handle at CybersecMigrant or on Instagram at CybersecMigrant. Keep learning, keep growing, and until next time, this is Femi signing off. Stay secure.